what I'm going to say. Yeah.
Neither do I. Welcome to LOA Today. Walt Thiessen and life coach Tom Wells here. Today is Friday, August the 31st, 2018, 8 a.m. Eastern Time, your first daily dose of happy for the day. And I think you may have heard a little tail end of our conversation before we started the show, just from a couple comments we made there, because I kind of turned it on before I muted everything here, Tom. So people are kind of like wondering, like, okay, well, they just said they don't know what they're going to say. How are we supposed to listen to that?
Yeah.
Hey, we actually do have a topic, and believe it or not, it's a pretty good one too. In fact, it's got us both really elevated. Like, this is going to be fun because Tom came up with a topic today, and I was seeing some stuff on Facebook that was just like, my reaction to it was WTF. I have no idea what this one person was talking about. Her commentary was so disconnected that I can't make head or tail out of it. And Tom says, well, yeah, that's where our topic is. And I'm thinking, great, maybe you can explain this to me.
I don't think I can explain that whole thing that she said. But
you can't. Oh, darn, that's what I was looking forward
to. But the bottom line of it, I think, is what this podcast is about.
Okay. So tell me.
So, it's basically saying that everything that the universe is presenting to us every second, you could say, okay, just in law of attraction terms, source is constantly presenting, orchestrating your life right now. So if you believe that, that's what I said in the explanation I put in there. If you believe that source is orchestrating your life every second, then that means that everything that's coming up in your life is exactly what you need to have in that moment. It's exactly what is, you could say, the perfect thing for you, because you're this infinite source that is really who we really are, is actually perfectly delivering to us exactly what we need for our most wonderful unfolding of our life. Now, that thing might show up as great envy, rage, jealousy, sadness, a horrible pain in my stomach, a terrible head cold, whatever it is. It's like, can we look at it and go, wow, this is what's happening. This is what's arising in my life. How can I embrace this and love it in such a way that I let this be okay as the very thing that is on my path that I need to fully accept and appreciate, instead of running from it or otherwise denying it or otherwise making it wrong or otherwise hating it or otherwise struggling against it or fearing it. How can I look at it as, is this universe and my higher consciousness really truly connected to divine knowing, to divine wisdom, to divine love? And so therefore, can I embrace this thing?
Okay.
And so
before you go any further, I just have one question. I want to make sure I'm clarified on one point. Because your statement and we put this in as the description, if source is actually orchestrating each of our lives to inspire our highest potential in human form, ... and then other stuff. What I'm wondering is, within that context that you describe in that phrase, who's doing the initiating? Is it the source that's initiating, or is it we who are initiating?
Depends on who you call we, but I believe that source and we and me are the same thing ultimately.
Oh, okay. All right.
And so everything that's showing up is my highest intention.
Okay.
In other words, it's the way that I am. You could say that if, like in the Course in Miracles, that I studied that for a while, and I have friends who have studied it extensively. And I don't know if you've ever looked into it or any of our listeners have. But
it gave me a headache, actually.
Yeah, but its basic premise, it's outdated in terms of trying to read that stuff for me. It's just ridiculous. I can't do it. But its basic message is beautiful, and there's a lot of people who interpret the Course in Miracles so that it's more understandable, and they have whole businesses that run off interpreting the Course in Miracles for people. And but it's basically saying one thing, in my understanding, is in every moment we could either be choosing love or fear. And so if we live from the sense that we're threatened by the things that are arising in our life, then we're in fear of them, and we're reacting to them, and we're getting angry about it, and we're getting fearful about it, or sad, or otherwise having an emotional reaction. Or we can understand it's all because of love that everything is happening. So, I really believe this is the bottom line of what Abraham is saying, is that source is always orchestrating your life in the most wonderful way possible. It's to give you the most beautiful journey you could be having. But along that journey, you might be experiencing these negative, so-called negative emotions, these difficult emotions. And so therefore you say, how could this be what's for my best unfolding? But if you trust that every single thing that's happening every moment is the expansion of your consciousness, then you learn to embrace those things. And then you find out what message they contain for you. What is the beauty within that thing somehow? So, like I've experienced this a lot of times. Like, say I wake up in four in the morning and I'm having this pain in my psoas on my right side, which I talk about all the time. So what I've done so many times is I put my hand on that, and I put my focus on it, and I feel into it. And as I do that, I very often lock into this place that is kind of like magical. It's where that thing begins to get to talk to me in a certain way. It tells me what it needs. It tells me why it's there, in a sense, because I can feel it. I can feel it begin to dissipate. I can feel it begin to shift, and it might even move to another part of my body, that then I begin to feel something in my shoulder, and I put my hand up there and I start rubbing my shoulder, and then that kind of moves into my neck and I start rubbing my neck. But in the whole process, what's happening is that the very emotion, whatever is behind that thing, it's talking to me, it's moving through my body, and it's unfolding my greater health. It's unfolding my greater healing. And so it's basically just saying that the universe is intelligent, and everything that's actually happening in our lives is for a divine unfolding.
All right. Well, let me go back to, because I think you're expressing some really great stuff here. But I still need to go back to the a priori part, the part, the assumptions that go into this. Because I think there's something really critical here that needs to be addressed. And that is, I asked you about who's initiating. Is it ourselves who are initiating, or is it source that's initiating? And your answer was essentially they're the same thing. Yeah. But then you spent the rest of your very beautiful description talking about how source was doing all these things for you, which suggests to me there's a very strong distinction between the two. So on the one hand, I have you saying, really, I and source are the same. And on the other hand, the rest of it is all about how source is doing all these things for you. So there's no distinction, and then there's a big distinction. And I want to know how they connect.
Well, I think, first of all, take a big deep breath.
Okay.
and relax, because they, of course they connect, because, there's not.
I'm not saying they don't connect, by the way.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just asking I'm asking for your understanding of how they connect.
Yeah. It's sort of like asking the mind what only the heart knows, maybe, but I believe that it can be talked about. Sure. I just, right now, when you ask me that question, I'm going, it's sort of like, well, how could they not connect? So I'm wondering where you don't see a connection.
No, I agree. They do connect. I'm asking about the nature of that connection.
Right.
I agree that they connect, but what I hear in the way that you described is we start with they are identical, and then we go to one is feeding the other. Well, that's a distinction there. There's a distinction when you say one is feeding the other. You're distinguishing between the two, but we started by saying there's no distinction, and that's where I have trouble with what you're saying. I'm not following you completely along that path.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. It sounds like my gut level reaction, first reaction, is that that's a semantic question.
I don't think it is, though. I think this is actually a very critical question. And the reason I say that is the same reason that I was reacting to what I saw on Facebook. I really do believe that there is, I'm not sure how to describe this. There is a duality of mindset that goes on among people who explore this kind of thing. And the duality shifts depending on where it is that they're thinking about the topic of the law of attraction and deliberate creation and spirituality and how we all fit into that and so forth. And that duality ends up tripping us up a lot of the time and leading us to conclusions that don't always work.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I want to make clearer understanding for myself of how the whole thing works so that I can make fewer mistakes, so that I have a better picture of how the whole thing works, so that I'm working within it well. Does that make sense to you?
Sure. What makes sense to me is that you're looking for peace of mind. You're looking for resolution. You're looking for ease. You're looking for a way to have a life that works.
Yeah. And I'm also looking for understanding that works beyond, on the one hand, we're all one, on the other hand, one is feeding the other. Because the logical way of that presentation falls apart. It starts with an assumption and then follows with evidence that contradicts the assumption. And I know deep down that there are no contradictions.
Right.
So I want to resolve. That's what I want to resolve. I want to resolve that apparent contradiction.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't. I'm unable to follow your line of reasoning in the sense of giving you some kind of answer. I think
okay, well, it's fair.
In our discussion, it'll open up perhaps if we pursue what this topic is today a little bit more. Maybe I could explain a little bit more what I'm wanting to talk about, and you see if it at all addresses what you're talking about.
Okay, sure.
What I'm trying to say is that there's a way to basically go inside your heart and say, well, whatever's coming up in my life, it's coming up for the right reason.
Okay.
And so therefore it's sort of like saying love, like the Course in Miracles say that love will always take care of everything. If you can be in this place of love, in this place of seeing through the eyes of love, and that love of yourself is trusting the love of the universe, is trusting your higher infinite self. It's trusting that something, you know how that old saying, your heart knows best, listen to your heart,
mm-hmm.
trust, that if you take this into your heart, your confusion about it can dissolve, your fear about it can dissolve, your hatred can dissolve. Somehow the heart has the ability to dissipate every emotional angst that you could ever have, and that's the premise of today's podcast. That is the way life actually works. And here's a little poem, to sort of that talks about this. It says, in every breath you take, love is always here. Throughout any personal encounter, love is always here. No matter what comes together or whatever is pulled apart in your life, love is always here. In your greatest moment of achievement, or even in your darkest hour of uncertainty, love is always here. Whether in the aftermath of tragedy or in the presence of your highest triumph, love is always here. When life is flowing, inspired, and harmonious, and even if it's frustrating, annoying, painful, or inconvenient, love is always here. When you feel alone or unsupported, love is always here. No matter what you understand and despite what you have yet to figure out, love is always here. Despite your thoughts, regardless of what you choose or how you feel, love is always here. No matter what has been done to you or whatever you believe you've done to others, love is always here.
Mm-hmm.
So basically it's saying that
love is always here.
That's sort of saying that Source is orchestrating your life.
Well, maybe. That's not the only way to interpret that, but I can understand that interpretation.
Okay, well, that's the interpretation I'm presenting in this podcast.
Oh, okay.
But basically, it's saying that love is orchestrating.
I love this.
Give me a break, Walter. This is my daily dose.
Okay. Oh, that's funny.
So that basically that if you believe that there is a divine or I don't know if you can relate to the word divine, but that there is a infinite perspective that is there's a consciousness that's orchestrating the universe that's got it figured out, and that there is a divine geometry to everything. And so no matter what you're experiencing, if you can relax into that, if you can do like I did when I was experiencing this pain at 4 a.m. in the morning, and I just put my hand on it and I just relaxed into it and said, whatever this pain is, I can love, I can somehow take it into my heart. I can somehow love it. I can somehow focus on it, and it will dissipate because it's part of what the universe is orchestrating for me right now. It wouldn't be showing up if it wasn't exactly right now what I need to be feeling. So, the fact that you go on Facebook and you read that woman's comments today that so much sent your mind wheeling, it's exactly what the universe delivered to you in that moment, exactly what's perfect for you. And
Well, I agree with that. I agree with that.
it's your projection entirely. You created it entirely for something for you to learn and know. And
well, perhaps more than that, but
yes,
but I agree that's part of it.
So everything that's showing up is for that reason. And when we begin to relax into that, it gives us a certain amazing freedom, because we can somehow embrace it and say, I love myself no matter what's showing up in me. I just fully embrace whatever's showing up, and let it guide you to the next thing, because you're not fighting it. I guess it's sort of just the difference between struggling against something or turning the boat downstream and going with the flow of what the universe is delivering to us.
Okay.
So now that I said all that, what comes up for you? Because I could go on and talk about that more.
I'm sure you could. No, I think there's a lot of valid stuff in there. I think I think what you presented actually makes a lot of sense. I mentioned earlier, I think that it's not the only way to look at it. I think there are a lot of ways to look at it, and I think there are a lot of valid ways to look at it. But I think that's a perfectly valid way of looking at stuff. For me, I look at things a little bit differently because, hey, I have a different perspective, right? And in my perspective, is there? I'm going to go back to the a priorities, to the assumptions that go into this conversation we're having. Primary concept that I hear you putting forward, and I hear a lot of people put it forward, is that there is a divine intelligence that is guiding and directing and making stuff happen. Orchestrating, I think is the word.
Yeah, we call it source in law of attraction.
Yeah, well, that's one way of looking at source. It's not the only way, because it's not the way I see it. I'm not saying that there's no intelligence back there, but I don't see it as a single director. And the reason I don't see it as a single director is because I do believe in individuality. I think that and I don't think there's any contradiction between the two. I do really believe that there can be both a larger sort of a group, if you will, or a systemic intelligence, and there's also individual intelligence. Just like with our bodies, I mean, how many people talk about the intelligence of ourselves? And yet we also have our own individual, unique intelligence as the person inhabiting the body. So both are happening at the same time. Well, as long as that's the case, then it raises a question that I think often doesn't get addressed sufficiently. And that question is, well, if the smaller units, we'll call it that, if the smaller units are also intelligent, are they not also contributing to the larger intelligence? And I think the answer is yes. So if that's the case, then I think it's too limiting to say, well, there is a larger intelligence that's directing everything, because that statement essentially ignores or kind of slides over the fact that intelligence is coming, I would say, almost exclusively from all the little pieces. You see what I'm saying? It's like there is a tendency that people have. They want that one intelligence to be there. And they want that intelligence to be the thing that's guiding and driving everything. But they don't want to think about the fact that intelligence exists and is effective largely because of all the little pieces that make it up. They just want the holistic part. They don't want the piece part. You see what I'm saying?
Kind of. I don't. Well, how does that affect you then? Like in who you are and how you live your day?
I think it just forms and shapes the way I understand myself. And that ties in. I mentioned there were two conversations I was having on Facebook. The other one was with a gentleman who was essentially arguing that you can either live for yourself or you can live for the benefit of others, but you can't do both. In other words, you cannot, and I'm probably phrasing his thinking in a way that he doesn't like, because I don't totally get his thinking. But essentially he's saying you cannot work for the benefit of others and do so in a way that makes you happy within yourself. And yet he also agrees that happiness is within our control. And I'm thinking, well, that just doesn't even work. That just doesn't make any sense. Because, I mean, the moment that you're doing something that makes yourself happy by helping somebody else, you are essentially inserting self into the equation in some way. I don't care how you justify it, but one way or another, there's self in there. Okay? But he doesn't see it that way. He thinks that there is a pure distinction, that on the one hand, you either are working for the benefit of others, or on the other hand, you're working for yourself, and ne'er the twain shall meet. You know, and so I'm trying to make sense out of his position, because I don't think his position makes any sense. And I see this as being part of a larger discussion that goes on, where people basically become dependent upon the idea of a larger intelligence guiding everything, which is fine in and of itself, but they do it to the exclusion of the idea that there are individual pieces contributing to that intelligence.
So are you saying, this is what I hear behind what you're saying, and maybe I'm wrong,
Sure.
but that you're saying that it comes down to the fact, are we simply receiving constantly from this infinite source, you could call it, this thing that I call source, or are we co-creating with it? Is that right?
Yes, exactly.
Right. And so what is co-creating with it? If what we are is an infinite being, because when we die, nothing changes. We just keep on going on. And we've been doing this forever, which is impossible to understand. so, and we can never get it wrong. And so every single thing we're doing is constantly hand in hand. It's almost like we're holding hands with this divine thing that we call the all-knowing infinite part of us. I mean, even Abraham's always saying, for example, the greater part of us is this infinite source, the greater part of us. And so the part that's here in 3D that's acting out is here to have the joy of playing with contrast. And so we just love to play with frustration and sorrow and rage and grief and blood and guts and everything, so that we can also play with joy and relief and finding resolution and being, ecstatic and dancing and singing. And so it's all this giant smorgasbord of contrast that we're playing with, but it's an infinite being that's playing with it all. So the co-creator is the infinite being that you could say created it all.
Well, it's not just, that's not the only infinite being, though.
What do you mean?
I mean that all the individual pieces are also infinite beings.
Okay, so you could say that there's this one consciousness that's called me, that's interacting with everything else.
Correct.
So there's some kind of consciousness, for example, in me that that is different than the consciousness in my psoas muscle, or different from the consciousness of the how many, 100 trillion cells in me. That every one of the 100 trillion cells has its own consciousness, and they're all aligning with source. And so
it's similar and different. It's both at the same time. This is where our words kind of get a little bit mushy for us, because we want to create distinctions, and we want the distinctions to be clear. But the simple fact is, we are both simultaneously individual and part of the group. We are both.
Right.
And so when we say, well, it's different, well, yes, it's different in the sense that we're individuals. It's the same in the sense that we're all part of the same group.
Okay.
And that's where we have to kind of, in my mind, keep our distinctions within a context. Yes, it's good to think of things in terms of the distinctions, in terms of this is what the differences are. We just don't want to get to the point where we say that difference is exclusive.
In what sense would it be exclusive?
In the sense of one or the other. It's either the collective or it's the individuals.
Right. Yeah, I can't see that. because it's
But
always
that's the position a lot of people take, though. That's why I'm so fascinated. I want to know why they take that
position.
I don't know. That's why I'm looking at this so with such a high degree of interest. I want to understand why they're taking that position.
Well, usually, whatever you attract into your field of your morphic field, into your holographic projection, because you're creating all those responses on Facebook. You're like, if you believe that that everything is happening through your consciousness, then what is it you're trying to tell yourself?
I have no
why
idea.
are you asking that question?
I agree that we attract all that. I don't agree that I always know why I'm attracting what I'm attracting.
Oh no, I know you don't. That's why you're asking.
But so, and this is the case of that. I don't know. That's why I'm exploring this. I don't know.
Great. That's great. Yeah, and the answer I'm sure is there, or you wouldn't create it.
Probably.
I mean, you're doing it for fun, probably on some level.
Yeah.
You're having fun playing this game.
Exactly. Yeah. It's fascinating. Like, holy cow, where is that coming from?
Mm-hmm. And you see, as you talk about the whole thing, to me, it doesn't even register as an issue that I can even wrap myself around, because for some reason, I don't know why.
I don't know.
And maybe if we talked about it more, I would see it that way. But of course, I've had that happen with you before, where sometimes after the podcast, we keep talking. And I remember several weeks ago, you were talking to me about something going on with my partner. And it took me an entire hour of us talking together before I could even grasp what you were talking about. It was sort of like you would say these things and I'd go, what's he saying?
He's a crazy man.
No, but eventually it made total sense. Eventually it was really helpful. And that's when I said, you're a really good coach. I said, you're actually like onto something that I can't even see. And sometimes that's what happens in coaching or therapy or something. The therapist can see something that the client can't.
Yeah.
Sometimes vice versa. The client's trying to explain something to the therapist can't see it.
That's why for me it always starts with, exactly what you're saying there. This is why it always starts with me with the idea of what is the relationship between the collective and the individual. That starting point is how that's my perspective. That's how I start to understand what's going on. And
about everything? You mean?
Anything that I'm looking at, yeah. What's the relationship there? Just because I see the same kinds of patterns happen over and over again. Somebody either takes one side or the other, and then it leads to results that they can't make head or tail out of, and so they start casting blame or getting upset or whatever. But the point is, because they lose track of that connection, they lose track of, not even the connection, they lose track of the relationship between the individual and the larger whole, and what all the pieces are of that relationship, all the elements of that relationship. They lose some chunk of that, and when they lose that, it leads them to results that they don't like. And then they start casting aspersions and being upset and saying, oh, no, you're doing this and doing that, and blah, blah, why aren't we doing more of it? It just leads them to all this craziness.
And in terms of law of attraction and what projection is, the statement that I've recently been using is, so how are you that?
How am I which?
The thing you're describing. In other words, the thing you're seeing out there in the marketplace, so to speak, that's coming to you, that you're seeing this powerful and then you just describe what it is. The way that I believe we need to look at that stuff is say, how am I that?
I see what you're saying. Yeah. How am I that? I am the person who, with that understanding, recognizes there are some times that I am forgetting one piece of it, or sometimes I'm forgetting another piece or a third piece. So for me, that orientation is my way of reminding myself, if I'm struggling with something, if I'm trying to find a way to something, go back there and ask myself, where am I ignoring something that's important in that overall paradigm? Mm-hmm. That becomes like a starting point for me to figure out, where am I going wrong? What's going? Where's the craziness going? And inevitably, that combined, and now with my not most recent, but one of my more recent acquisitions, so to speak, is reconnecting with feeling, reconnecting with emotion. Well, that has really filled in a lot of gaps that I had before in terms of my understanding of how that relationship works between the individual units and the collective whole. As I go along, I keep developing new ways to understand how that whole thing connects together, And
Mm-hmm.
whenever I find myself in a place of feeling bad, I can inevitably see the part of it that I'm attached to, in a sense. But I also recognize there's another piece that's missing. What's that other piece? Because that other piece is informing why it is I'm in such a miserable place.
Okay, so you said you're getting more realization about emotion.
Yep.
What is it that you're getting?
That, well, let's see. From the 10,000 foot view, it's that emotion is a major player in the whole picture.
Mhm.
It, for instance, I like the way Abraham describes it. That emotion is what happens when your physical being and your non-physical being are in disagreement or out of alignment with each other. The emotion or even in alignment. It's whether or not there is some degree of alignment, and what that some degree of alignment creates is the emotion. Am I saying that right? I'm not sure if I'm saying that right or not.
Well,
But
the way I understand what they say is that the emotions are our guidance system,
yeah,
and so
yeah,
whatever's
but more,
showing up.
but I'm being more specific than that. I'm saying that the emotions are created by the relative alignment or misalignment of the physical and non-physical being,
Hmm. Okay.
and that's where they actually come from. That to me is really useful. That's very valuable information. On the one hand, it means, well, by corollary, we also know not well. It's not so much by corollary; it's a second a priori. We are taught that all of the non-physical side of that emotional equation is always focused on our highest good. So, therefore, everything that we get, every message that we get, every alignment that we get, every misalignment that is slightly in alignment, all that kind of stuff, all the parts of the signal that come through, so to speak, from the non-physical to the physical, can be trusted.
Yes, and that's
Okay,
the point of this podcast, right?
right. Well, that's a great thing. That's a wonderful thing. So, and that's just one piece of what I've learned from my relatively new understanding of emotion. But it
Hmm.
even goes beyond that. There's
Hmm.
also the fact that now I can understand why I have negative emotion. There's a
Yeah.
misalignment going on there. Why is there a misalignment? Because there's something I'm focusing on in contrast that I don't like.
Hmm.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, now at least I know what I'm dealing with here. Before I was like, it was like I was a blind man wandering in the universe, having no idea what was going on, and all these terrible things were going on to me. Now I have an idea of why they're happening. Oh, okay. Well, it gives me a measure of control I didn't know that I already had. So that's a good thing too. And I appreciate and understand that connection, like I said, from my original, maybe not original, maybe it's the wrong word, from my personal starting point for understanding how things work, and that is the relationship between the individual and the larger whole. When I look at that relationship, I say to myself, it's very similar to the relationship between my physical and my non-physical. Some people would say it's the same thing. I'm not sure it's 100% the same, but certainly there's enough parallel there that I won't quibble about the distinction. And the simple fact is, when I'm connected through my from my physical being to my non-physical being, and I'm in alignment, I'm getting. It's as if I'm connected to the whole. I mean, the connection is pure. It's
Hmm.
true, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Now, there are a lot of ways we can look at that. A lot of people look at that as, well, this is the way that the larger whole is directing me. Okay, well, that's one way to look at it. Another way to look at it is, this is how I am tapping in to the larger whole in order to do what I'm doing, which isn't really, that's really me doing the directing. And is there an important distinction there? Well, some people say yes, some people say no. To me, it's just different ways of looking at it.
Hmm. Well, I'm no, it all sounds like thoughts and ways I've looked at things throughout my journey here, especially with the law of attraction work. And I'm finding that there's so many things about what's actually our role, my role in my life, like day by day, moment by moment. And it seems like I'm learning, at least my leading edge of learning is right now that I am allowing myself to be receptive to the fact that I'm always being given the right thing at the right time in the right way. The thing I said in the beginning,
Yeah,
that
that's the trust factor I was talking about.
We're on a journey.
Yeah, we're able to trust that information that's coming through. That's a good thing.
And that's really, the way I'm looking at it, and I guess what I'm proposing in this podcast was, that's all I need. In other words, if I know that there's you could call it a divine intelligence, a source knowing that is orchestrating things. In other words, that everything's in my vortex. It's all in this beautiful place where it's already all a done deal. Just because I even had the slightest inkling that I wanted something, whether I felt it or I thought it, it's created. And now the universe is simply doing everything it can to give me, and the universe doesn't make any mistakes. It knows everything I need every single second. And therefore, every single thing that's arising every second, all I have to do is really embrace it with the love of my heart, like this open-armed embrace, and say, whatever it is, even if it hurts like shit. I'm sorry. If it hurts really bad, I'm embracing it.
See, now I got to mark this as being explicit. You just turned this episode into explicit.
That one word.
That one word, dude. It's just crazy.
That's not a bad word. It's normal. Okay.
No, I'm just giving you a hard time. That's all.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's so much, you have to be so careful about who you are. But I don't know. I kind of lost my train of thought.
Sorry.
But okay, it's my train of thought is so friggin' simple at this particular moment in my life that I need, in other words, to have a way forward in my life that really is all encompassing of everything that arises in my life. So no matter what shows up, I mean, if I get a flat tire later today, or if I, look in the mirror and I think I'm too fat, or whatever it is, it's like, that's what's coming up for me. And it's all part of some perfectly orchestrated unfolding, like there isn't any mistakes going on. And so therefore, how do I live in a place where I become the catalyst, or I become the most cooperative component? That's the thing Abraham's always saying, are you the cooperative component with your own success, with your own unfolding, with everything unfolding in your life in the way you want it to, because you're the key to the cooperation for it to happen. You're the co-creator. And so I just feel like, how do I become that completely trusting co-creator? Well, I do it by trusting my infinite part of me that's orchestrating everything, just to know that if I'm feeling a particular frustration this morning, that frustration is telling me something. And it's telling me, one thing is that source doesn't see it that way, but it's also telling me, relax and learn from this feeling what it's trying to tell you.
Sure.
It's simply trying to tell you something about, and it doesn't, I don't even have to have a story. I don't even have to know what all it's trying to tell me. And that's really key to me right now in my life, because I feel like I'm dealing with emotions that have perhaps been unexpressed in me for most of my life, because I'm seeing a couple of therapists right now, and coach, and I'm learning that it's all about my letting everything teach me, you might say, and letting it be whatever it is, so that I can kind of move through it and no longer have a resistance about it. How Abraham's always saying the key to everything is to recognize the resistance that we're holding. So, like, for example, I'm experiencing an allergy the last week, especially this last 3 days. And I'm saying, what is it emotionally? Because even when you study allergies, you find out that they most medical things today are saying that they seem to have a very strong emotional component.
Oh yeah, hugely. Yeah.
Hugely. And so what is it that I'm, or I eat a certain food and I get a really strong reaction? Well, what emotionally is causing that? I would like to know. And so I'm discovering that whatever's coming up, I can hold it in a place of love, take it into my heart, so to speak, or even sit with it, close my eyes, and just say, I love you, my nose. What are you trying to tell me?
I love that. That's great.
Dear loving nose, dear loving sinuses.
That's fabulous.
What are you trying to tell me? Oh, I love you so much. And
You sound like
It's
Abraham there for a moment.
well, yeah. Here, let me read this little thing to you. This is
Okay.
another poem, and of course, if it gets to be too much, just say, okay, that's enough. When I'm sad, I deserve more love, not less love. When I'm angry, I deserve more love, not less. When I'm
Hmm.
frustrated, I
Sure.
deserve more, not less. And it goes on and on. When I'm
Yeah.
hurt, when
Yeah.
I feel guilty, I deserve more love, not less. No
Absolutely.
matter what's ever happened in my life, no matter if it seems cruel and confusing. And so it's like, is that in indeed the entire Course in Miracles is based on that one idea that no matter what's happening, what you need is to embrace it and love it and allow it to show you the way back to source, the way to get realigned. And that's why it's showing up in your life. It's every single thing, every second is showing up because it's going to show you how to get realigned one way or the other. But you got to be able to hold it, accept it, and see what its message is for you, instead of rejecting it, pushing it away, stuffing it, or otherwise saying I'm screwed up.
Hmm.
It's like,
Hmm. Sure.
because I have this feeling. Instead, say, okay, I have this feeling. How can I be the observer of it and just witness it and allow it to show me how to morph back into this relationship with source where I'm really feeling aligned, and not even to be in a hurry, but just to
Hmm.
let that thing kind of dissipate. Now, I got to admit, I've been working on that with my sinus conditions for many years now,
Mm.
and I've dissipated so much of conditions I used to have that I don't really suffer with the sinus conditions, but
That's good.
they still haven't completely dissipated. Now, is
But
it
you
because
but
I
you've made a lot of progress, and that's really the important thing.
well, I guess, yeah. I
It
mean, I
really
definitely
is.
acknowledge that. I
Because
definitely
that's you
acknowledge that.
moving toward your goal. So you're moving in the right
Right,
direction. You're if
right.
in the Mike Dooley analogy of driving from New York to Los Angeles using your GPS, you haven't turned north into Canada. You're still heading toward Los Angeles. So that's a good thing.
Right. But I guess that part of me that wants to get, completely rid of the sinus condition says, why is this thing still lingering when I've been just letting it dissipate and letting it dissipate and letting it dissipate? Why? But that's when I say, well, there must be some deeper emotional thing in there that maybe happened when I was in my mother's womb. Maybe it happened at my birth. Maybe it happened when I was 2 years old before I had any cognition to even know what's going on. So maybe there's the deeper emotion there. And I just need to keep letting whatever's there show up so that I can embrace it, love it, and let it heal. Let it transform. You can call it healing or you can call it turning towards source, but it's like,
It all
I
pretty much
guess.
is the same thing. Yeah. I
So
mean,
anyway, this is what's up for me now in my life, and which is
well,
why
I
I
think it's
picked
up
that.
for everybody. I mean, I know that I'm going
Yeah.
through similar kinds of stuff.
Uh-huh.
Essentially, we come up against these resistances. This is really kind of what you're describing. We come up against these resistances, and then we say, okay, what are we going to do about these resistances? I got a resistance I just ran into. I got to
Yeah.
have some way to deal with that. So I
Mhm.
need to understand why it is that I haven't been able to get rid of it so far. I need to somehow go through it to kind of dissipate it. I need to do something about this resistance. That's what we do, and that's what we
Mhm.
deliberate creators run into regularly on a day-to-day basis. And there are a
Mhm.
lot of strategies that we undertake to accomplish our goal of getting the resistance out of the way. The thing that I always have in the back of my mind is somehow what we're really aiming to do is to stop paying attention to the resistance. That's really what we're trying to do. We're trying to say, you know what, I'm just not going to even be there anymore. And the moment that I'm no longer there is the moment that it goes away. That's really where we're trying to get to. But we still, because we are in some ways, kind of attached or even enslaved to what is, we're so focused on it, we're so attached to it, we're so wrapped up in it, we can't find a way to let go of it. We can't find a way to say, oh, I just don't want that anymore. So we keep looking for ways to go through it, around it, touch it, play with it, turn shapes. And a lot of these modalities do help us eventually to let go, which is a good thing. And
Mhm.
yet I'm constantly struck by the fact that if we could just find some way to simply just let go, it would be gone.
Yeah, and I think that's what I'm proposing today, is that the way to do that perhaps is to somehow go into the thing that's coming up in
Yeah,
a
that,
in
that
a more loving way. I mean, where we accept the fact that we can love it. We say, I can love this thing no matter what it is, and I'll hold it, for a couple of minutes here in my consciousness, and and pour love towards it. I'll
Mm-hmm.
say,
Yeah, it's a valid way to do it.
I love myself for no matter what it is that's showing up, and I don't want to push any of this stuff away because they're coming up to guide me back to source. So
Mm-hmm.
let me take the full message of it, and in doing so, it does begin to dissipate. It does
Sure.
begin to dissolve, and like you said, and pretty soon we don't even notice that. It's not hurting as much as it was. It's not
Exactly.
bothering as
Yeah.
much as it was.
It reminds
Whatever
me.
it
It reminds me of a scene from a book by Richard Bach. You ever read Illusions by Richard Bach? Came out in the 1970s.
No, but I read Jonathan Livingston Seagull. It
Yeah.
changed my life.
Yeah. Well, Illusions is kind of like the sequel to Jonathan Livingston
Okay.
Seagull.
Yeah, I didn't read it. No.
In that book, the basic story is that the author, the storyteller, Richard, his name in the book is Richard, meets up with a modern day Messiah. Except that he's kind of a reluctant Messiah because he really doesn't want to be a full Messiah. I mean, he's good at doing miracles and so forth, but the crowds, he's just not really interested in all that. Just not interested in it. So he ends up the two of them end up flying biplanes around the Midwest, giving rides for $3 a ride.
Oh, I think I can remember that. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. And of course, that fits in perfectly with Richard Bach because he was an avid pilot. He loved flying. That was really big for him. That was part of the reason he wrote Jonathan Livingston Seagull in the first place, because it was about flying.
Oh, maybe that's where I read about the flying.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. But anyway, among the many discussions that they have, the Messiah character, his name is Donald Shimoda. And Donald is constantly performing miracles. Like, for instance, they land their planes, and Richard goes over and wipes the bugs that have died off of the windshield. And Donald goes over and just waves his hand, and all the bugs come to life and fly away. And Richard's like looking at this like, what the hell did you just do? Well, at one point early on in the book, Donald is trying to teach Richard how to do the miracles. And so Richard says, well, okay, teach me how to make make that cloud go away. And Donald says, which cloud? And Richard says, see that really big black one up there? And Donald turns to him and says, but do you hate me or something? You have to pick like the biggest, darkest, blackest cloud to make it go away? Okay, fine. So, all right, well, why don't you try to do it first? And no, you got to show me how to do it. Okay, so which cloud is it? And Richard looks up, and there's this big gaping hole where the black cloud was. He goes, yikes, what just happened? And Donald says, no, you're making too big of a deal out of this thing. You're making it much, much bigger than it is. You're treating it as if it were something that were so big that you just got to find some way around it, when all you have to do is just let go of it. Very LOA-ish, right? Well, a little bit later on, Richard decides, okay, well, I'm willing to try it. Let's try, let me see if I can do it. Show me how to do it. And Donald says, okay, well, pick that one little cloud over there, that little white one, not that real big one over there. Pick that one little cloud. Just make that go away, okay? Richard says, okay. So he's basically firing all his fireballs at it, and he's doing all the things he knows how to do, and the cloud just doesn't go away. And Donald says, no, you're making a big deal out of it. Don't make a big deal out of it. Calm down, relax, get into that, just let it happen.
Yeah.
And finally, very slowly, that cloud shrinks a little bit more, and a little bit more, and a little bit more, and then finally it goes away. And Donald's reaction is, wow, you were so attached to that cloud and it still went away for you anyway. That's amazing. That's what I hear when I hear what you described, or even what I do the same thing. Of like, I'm making progress. I'm making progress in terms of I have made all this great progress in terms of getting rid of my allergy, and yet it's still there. We're still so attached to the allergy, despite all the progress we made. Now, is the progress good? Yeah. Absolutely, the progress is wonderful. We're pointing in the right direction. We're moving the right way, and yet we're asking ourselves, well, damn it, the allergy hasn't gone away, and right there we're attached again.
Right, and then it flares up.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's always when it flares up for me. Is like,
we're comical. We're comical beings.
Start focusing on it. Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's this we've coming from old paradigm of believing that there is this incredible difficulty. There's this incredible darkness, and so we think that the things that are dis-ease are a big deal, and they're and they can't dissipate that quickly or that easily. We've sort of never had a paradigm where we're like the guy who can just think of changing the clouds or creating the bugs, bringing the bugs back to life is just natural thing. It's just really easy. It's nothing about it. You just do it. And I've met people like that.
Mm-hmm.
They bring about results in their life, say with money or with something,
Yeah,
relationship,
sure.
health, and they do it just so casually,
Exactly.
nonchalantly.
Yeah.
Of course,
Yeah.
of course, I just made $1 million, and it's easy to make $1 million,
Right.
And
But when we're on the other side of it and we're attached to, oh, we got to make that $1 million, and we can't make the $1 million, we get frustrated, and then, oh, geez, when is this going to go away? When am I going to get better, and all that kind of thing. And the person who actually earned it said, I just earned it. It wasn't a big deal.
Right. Well, this guy just showed up and he gave me this opportunity,
Yeah, right.
this contract, and it turned out that's exactly what I do. And it just turned out that he needed, 200 of them, and it turned into $1 million.
And the rest of us are saying, what?
Yeah. And I've seen that in my life. I'm sure we all have. I've in my old book business, college textbook business, I would go out and so many of the days when I was feeling really easy and lighthearted and having a ton of fun talking with professors and things, and I would just coast through the day, and at the end of the day I made $1,500, a couple $1,000, and it would be, yeah, well, it was easy, nothing to that. I just go on to the next day, and it would be like, but I can remember in so many early days in that business how I struggled so hard to make $300, and by the time the business ended, it was every day I made $1,500, and I didn't even try. I just, I had to show up, but it just became part of my nature to know that I was going to make that. And so how that happens, it's pretty amazing, because now I'm trying to do the same thing in my coaching business. It doesn't flow as easily, and I'm curious as to why doesn't it flow as easily? Like it's sort of just having, well, I think because in the coaching business I have to have faith in me as opposed to faith in the books showing up and just making the right connection. Now it's like having total faith that I am the source of my income. But it's really no different. It's just some kind of things happen inside of us, I guess, inside of me, that I don't understand how it happens. How do I let go when I need to let go? How do I allow the resistance to dissipate in some situations that it seems difficult to let it dissipate?
I think it's part of what we're trying to learn. That's part of what we're trying to do in this lifetime, and in perhaps all of our lifetimes. We're trying to master, how do we let go when it seems like there's no way to do it. And Mike Dooley likes to point out to us, well, the how isn't up to us, which is really mind-bending. The first time you hear that one, what do you mean the how is not up to us? Right. But nevertheless, the how is not up to us.
The same thing Abraham says.
Yeah, pretty much. But it's a disturbing message. Well, okay, if the how isn't up to us, then what am I supposed to do?
It's a liberating message, though.
It is. Ultimately, it is, yes.
That's what this podcast is trying to say today. I'm trying to say in this topic, like, you can take everything into your heart and simply surround it with love, embrace it with love, no matter what arises in your life, embrace it with love, and everything will work out for you. Mm-hmm. It might not happen overnight, instantly or something, but you continue to do that. You develop that habit. It's sort of like the same thing Abraham says of just pointing your boat downstream. You just continue no matter what. You set the oars down, you quit trying, and there is no, like Yoda said, there is no try, there's only do. Mm-hmm. So all there is you just constantly, you're letting go. Constantly you're letting go. And that's what Abraham's constantly saying. That's your only job, is to completely let go to your well-being. It's through your receptivity. It's like, how receptive can you be? And it's sort of like this cosmic joke in a way. It's like, you mean the whole thing is really, yes. The whole thing is going to work? The whole thing just works? Yeah. So even in spite of all my frustration, my anger, and my fear, everything's just always working out. And that thing is showing up exactly on my doorstep because it's exactly what I need in this moment. Yeah. Yeah. Even though I think I created it and I've been stuck here for 10 years. Yeah. it's exactly what you need today is exactly that thing. So just go with the flow and embrace it with love, and everything is going to be fine.
Mm-hmm.
It's all going to work out. It's just your attitude to the whole thing.
Yeah.
The universe is designed in a perfectly choreographed way, and it's always unfolding. You're tapping into the same energy that's keeping the planets spinning. It's the same energy that creates a baby in the womb. You're completely tapping into that every second, and all you got to do is just trust as much as you did when you were in the womb. Did you try to make any of that happen? No, you just were taken care of totally for all those 9 months. And it's no different when you're out here in this realm. You're being totally taken care of, but you just don't think so.
It reminds me of a line from a Robert Heinlein novel. Heinlein was somebody I really liked reading a lot.
Yeah, I used to read him.
Did you read Heinlein? Do you
remember? Just a few of his things.
Oh, okay. Well, there was one particular character, Lazarus Long, who showed up in a number of the books. And at the end of this one book, Time Enough for Love, he ends up as a time traveler and ends up getting killed in World War I. Now, he was like from the future, but he ends up getting killed in World War I. Uh-huh. And the next scene is him interacting with the divine source. And he's asking all these questions and expressing all these frustrations. And the divine source says to him, "Oh, so you checkmated yourself again, did you?"
That's right. Checkmated yourself. That's exactly where it's at.
Is that what it is? I mean, it's crazy.
Well, yeah, it's what you're doing with these Facebook things. It's like you're putting yourself into a checkmate where you have to then acknowledge what is the message I'm giving myself.
Yeah, yeah.
You're checkmating yourself.
Trying to get a sense.
Show yourself something.
Mm-hmm. I don't know what yet, but I'll figure that one out eventually.
Yeah. And even what you create in your other things we're doing in our life, in our business situations, our relationship situations. I mean, I've got a very unusual thing going on in my relationship situation, and yet I feel like, well, I created this for something that is exactly the perfect time, perfect thing I need to learn. I don't get it yet. I don't like it. But
this is where I ask myself, what on earth was I thinking?
Yeah. Right. Or what on else was I feeling?
Yeah, right.
Everything's in response to a vibration, And if we're confused about what's showing up in our life, well, there's some vibration that's in there, and it might come from a time you don't even remember.
Right.
But
yeah.
It's there.
That's actually a little bit disturbing too, realizing that it could come from a time I don't even remember. And it's like, well, what am I supposed to do with that?
Well, that's when you just love what you love.
Yeah, pretty much. That's about all you have left at that point. Yeah.
And let it then just dissipate, because you just surround it with love. You surround it with acceptance. Love is sort of appreciation and acceptance. Whatever it is, you go, well, somehow I got to appreciate and accept this fact that I've been trying to lose weight for 5 years, and I still look the same as I did 5 years ago. It's like, well. Somehow that's exactly what I'm creating for some perfectly divine reason.
And curiously enough, that often becomes the way to just let go.
Yeah, because you just go, what the hell?
Yeah. Well, I don't want us to let go just yet, because we got about 2 minutes left, and I always want to get our last messages in for the show. If you are enjoying the show, and I know that Tom and I have been enjoying it a lot, we hope you are too. If you're still listening, you probably are. We want you to take a moment to just post that fact. Go to your favorite Facebook if you like. Go to Twitter, go to Instagram, go to LinkedIn, go to wherever you like to do your posting, and just say, hey, I've been listening to LOAtoday.net. Say whatever you like about it, but just include that phrase, LOAtoday.net, because it helps pass the word. More people find out about it who you don't even know about just because you post it. So please help spread the word about it so that more and more people can get their daily dose of happy. If you're not yet a subscriber, hey, great opportunity. Take the opportunity to do it right now. Go to LOAtoday.net, and then the instructions on how to subscribe are right there. Just follow those instructions. And then you can too get all these wonderful episodes coming to your smartphone every day to listen to whenever you want to. And Tom, sometimes it's just not enough to listen to a podcast. Sometimes you got to talk to somebody. If you're a life coach, how do they reach out to you if they need to talk to somebody?
If anybody wants to talk to me, they can go to my website, youarejoy, youarejoy.com, and sign up for a free half-hour coaching with me, in which case we go over something that's up for you, and I'll talk to you about how we could work on that thing together, if you can decide if you want to do some coaching with me.
Sounds great. Well, Tom, this has been excellent. This has been one of our livelier conversations. I'm wired. I'm so excited. So this has been good. I can't wait to do it again next Monday with you.
Yeah, maybe we'll be on a similar topic. I seem to be sort of stuck on this love thing. So.
Well, I'm sure we'll have a lot of fun with it, and we hope that you'll join us next time as well here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.